Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Kelly Nicoll, IOSH President, and I am really delighted to be joining you today for this webinar. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping points for you all. So today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available within the next few days. If you do have any questions, please do ask these in the Q&A box, which you should be able to see on the bottom of your device's screen. So most of you should know what IOSH is. Many of you will be members and volunteers, but for the benefit of anybody who is unfamiliar with us, the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health is the largest professional body for OSH in the world. We qualify new entrants into the profession, and IOSH exists as a charity for the public good, protecting workers through good safety and health at work. As part of IOSH's response to better understand the challenges and opportunities ahead for the future of work and the OSH profession, we commissioned a report to reflect on these horizons. The result is the report you see here, Towards a Safe and Healthy Future of Work, which looks at current and future changes created by new technologies and demographic shifts and external forces such as climate change. The report is also a paper you may want to refer to following this webinar, which can be accessed online by scanning the QR code here. The report poses a fundamental question when it comes to looking at technologies and new innovations and how they can affect health and safety. So what if using new technologies to improve worker protection creates other health, safety and well-being risks, the report asks. Machines such as robots and drones can be used in some of the most hazardous environments, such as heights and confined spaces. We also have things like exoskeletons that enable humans to carry out tasks previously beyond our abilities. Digitization of administrative and even creative tasks, especially using generative artificial intelligence, could replace even more jobs. One estimate is that up to 80% of tasks in certain jobs are automatable. This can throw up physical risks for the humans left working alongside the machines. And safety and health professionals need to be at the table to discuss digital and technological interventions so that they can advocate for safety in design and worker-centered approaches. So with all of this in mind, this webinar is delving into how technology can be utilised to help inclusion at work, looking at new innovations to bring further equity and equality in the workplace and support the inclusion of people with disabilities in the working environment. I have an amazing panel joining me today with years of background and expertise behind them, and I would like to invite each panelist to first introduce themselves and give us a little taste of your own experiences in this area. So, Filippo?
Hello, everybody. I'm Filippo Sinicato from the European Disability Forum. We work on advocacy for persons with disabilities at European level, especially as far as social policy and employment is concerned. So for safety and occupational, we are there working for persons with disabilities.
Fantastic. And Neil, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Neil Milliken. I'm the Global Head of Accessibility for Atos, and we're a large global IT services company. So accessibility impacts both our employees and all of the people that we deliver services for.
Great, thank you. And Majid, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Majid Al-Kader, I'm the CEO of MX Reality. We kind of provide immersive illusion and virtual reality. Pleasure to be here.
That's great. Thank you very much. So to begin with, I'd really like to welcome Filippo for the first presentation of European research on digital skills, accommodation, and technological assistance. Filippo, over to you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you for having me once again. We will start by showing a video EDF has prepared for the launch of the report Kelly was talking about. It's a report on digital skills, reasonable accommodation, and assistive technology. What you'll see in the video, it's personal testimonies of persons with disabilities. There you go.
At European level, 75% of persons without disabilities are employed, compared to only 51% of persons with disabilities. Some of the main barriers to their employment are a lack of digital skills, insufficient provision of reasonable accommodation and assistive technology. Let's take a look at two testimonies. Dirk was a manager in one of his company's departments. Despite his well-known visual impairment, the company did not offer any accommodation and his concerns were ignored. During meetings, his colleagues insisted on using inaccessible tools, such as projecting slides onto a whiteboard. This was one of the reasons he had to leave the organisation. Antonia is a wheelchair user with reduced mobility in her arms. Her employer has never asked her if she needs assistive technology or any other accessible tools. To use the office equipment, she had to adapt to find solutions on her own. People with disabilities are researchers, actors, receptionists, policymakers, engineers, architects. We can create a more inclusive work environment with a mix of flexibility and technological solutions. What can you do to support your employees with disabilities? Simply ask them what they need to do their job properly. Listen to their requests. Implement these changes for a better, more inclusive workplace. The solution is simple. You ask, listen, implement. Give it a go.
So as you can see from the video, we did a research on the employment condition of persons with disabilities, and especially we focus on technology in employment. I'll go over next slides, please. Briefly on who we are. EDF is an independent NGO based in Brussels, and we represent around 100 million of persons with disabilities all around the continent. We have more than 100 active members. Next slide, please. And what we do is we monitor European policy and support our members. We advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities, and the core business, if we can call it, is working towards the full implementation of the UNCRPD. Next slide, please. Now onto the project. The data project is the so-called European Research on Digital Skills Accommodation and Technological Assistance for Employment, as Kelly was saying before. Next slide, please. So the data project was funded by google.org, and it has been carried out in 27 countries, 26 member states of the European Union plus the UK. And the main aim of the project was to map the policy that fostered the inclusion of persons with disabilities at work, with a specific concern and a specific focus on the analysis of the digital and technological components of the labor market. Okay, so the reason behind the research was a lack of data on the digital and technological component, and the fact that it's very hard to compare research coming from different countries due to different data use or different approaches. The other question was from members to gather case studies and good practices to help all stakeholders involved. And finally, it's a note by us at EDF, a wish, if you want, about nudging tech companies and all stakeholders involved to work towards this kind of topics. Next slide. So as I said, the main three topics are digital skills, assistive technology, and reasonable accommodation. Now I will discuss a little bit the results we found from our study that are based on the questionnaire we administer around 565 employers all across Europe. Next slide, please. So in this questionnaire, I'll focus on some of the topics we touched. The first one, it's human resources. As you can see from the slides, only 25% of the interview employers do have an internal policy that foresee the inclusion, the employment inclusion of persons with disabilities. while 81% do not have codified guidelines for the acquisition of assistive technology. This means they do not have rules that a sort of process, a standardized process that help employees with disability receive their assistive technology. 70% do not have defined procedure regarding reasonable accommodation, which, if you want, is a larger set than assistive technology. And this percentage rises to 75% when the whole recruiting process is concerned. So as far as the employment and the recruiting is concerned, this means that employers do not have accessible documentation, for instance, for a job posting, or do not have a standardized procedure for granting poses to candidates that need them during interviews. Next slide. So onto the digital skills. In a digitalized world that we are right now, digital skills are essential to land and retain a job position. So employers said they do deem persons with disabilities who lack digital skills, essential digital skills, as a burden when hiring. It's also true that most of them do not have ongoing, let's say, a consistent, it's sort of insufficient experience with candidates with disabilities. And some of the countries, especially the southern one, consider candidates with disabilities for more low-tech roles, so they do not really digital skills. And it is also true that these employers do provide small training. So as you can see, 1 in 2 interview employers provide training for candidates with disability, and a negligible amount, a negligible proportion of those that actually offer training, tailor those training for persons with disabilities. Next slide. On the assistive technology, what we see is that 75% do not know that their employees are using assistive technology. And this is both for employees with and without disabilities, because assistive technology is beneficial to all, regardless of their disability status. For most countries and most employers, they saw that the procedure for the acquisition of assistive technology are long and convoluted. So there's a lot of bureaucratic aspects to take into account. And lastly, it's the big question of AI. At EDF, we're working more on AI after this project. And for the future, it all depends on how AI will develop, especially for the kind of disabilities. For instance, persons with intellectual disabilities are more neglected as far as AI is concerned. Okay, thanks. Next slides, but okay, it's over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Filippo. I would now like to bring in Nicoll for our next presentation, looking at how technology can assist disabled workers. Thanks, Nicoll.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you, Filippo, because many of the things that you mentioned are things that I come across in my day-to-day work. And I'm a user of assistive tech, and I have been using it for the last 25 years. So it's really important for me as an individual and for my role. So my organization's actually been working on delivering assistive technology support for the last couple of decades. Over that time, we've managed to sort of make this more and more business as usual. And we're working continuously to further integrate disability inclusion into all of the work practices of our organization and for our customers. And we believe this to be, of significant importance. And why are we doing this? Well, we believe that, it makes it effective for our organization, and there's a big payback. And I'll come on to some stats shortly. I just want to talk a little bit about accessibility and assistive technology. Accessibility is, the degree to which people can use stuff, particularly people with disabilities. And it's also got to be sort of hopefully equally usable. So we need to be able to interact. And assistive technology are the technologies that people like me, people with mobility issues, people with visual impairments and hearing impairments use to be able to interact and so on. And accessibility is also the art of making it interoperable, those technologies, with the mainstream technologies that people deploy in businesses. And you know, we're not talking about a small population here. You know, it is billions of people worldwide. Now, it depends on which figures you look at, which figures you take, but it doesn't really matter, because any of these figures show that it's hugely significant numbers of people, up to 26% of all women in the UK. And the World Health Organization says that 2.5 billion people use assistive tech, although their definition of what assistive tech is includes pretty basic things like crutches and mobility aids. On top of that, Boston Consulting Group did a study on disability in the workplace. They said that companies generally record between 4 and 7% of their workforce as having a disability. Yet, when the individuals took sort of an employee satisfaction survey that was anonymous, 25% of those participants reported that they had a disability or long-term health condition. And that's pretty consistent with the sort of government statistics, we say. So there is a bit of a trust gap going on between employers and employees. But if we go one step further, you might have between 4 and 25% of your workforce as having a disability, but far, far more people use assistive technology and assistive features. 85% of all of the videos viewed on Facebook are viewed with the sound off, and 80% of viewers are more likely to finish a video with captions or subtitles. So that means that more people than acknowledge that they have a disability are using these features, because they may find that they are situationally disabled. So looking at the stats for the UK, you can see that 23% overall of working age adults have a disability. Right? And as you get to state pension age, that number rises significantly. So a lot of people acquire disabilities as they age. I think the next stat is more scary, right? And this actually shows that whilst you'd expect mobility, stamina, and dexterity issues to increase as people age, and likewise with memory, hearing, and vision, mental health, actually the biggest reporting of mental health issues is of people of working age. So that means that there are really significant issues in the working environment for people with disabilities, and the challenges that people with disabilities face in the working environment or trying to get work impact on mental health. Quite often you find that you have comorbidities of different disabilities and mental health because of the challenges that you're facing just dealing with the access to work. I'm not talking about the government grant here. So there's an awful lot that we can do, and it improves people's lives, it improves the bottom line of organizations, but still organizations don't do it. And why don't they act on the data? Well, it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They don't know whether they're going to get it wrong. They're worried about saying the wrong thing. They're worried about getting sued. They don't know where to start. They're not sure what to do. They're not even sure what's effective or what it will cost. And then they doubt whether or not they have the skills. They don't know who has the budget and whether it's needed. And frankly, a lot of the people that are doing this work are doing it alone within their organization. So we really need to support those people. We can address some of this. There are clear inclusion drivers that are driving organizations. So there's the social good and the sustainable development goals. There's reporting and compliance. So lots of organizations are having to report on CSRD. If you do business in Europe, you will have to be reporting on this. There are cultural programs, and there's employee experience, and accessibility intersects both with diversity and CSR initiatives. We made a commitment to the Valuable 500, and one of the things that we are doing is we talk about treating exclusion like pollution. And the reason we do this is because the organization was really good at sustainability. We understood how to take the carbon out of things, reduce our energy consumption. And what we're doing here is treating inaccessibility as a negative externality in the same way that we would for pollution. Externalities aren't all bad. You have what could be called the curb cut effect. So when you design something that works for people with disabilities, other people benefit. We went one step further than that. We actually then said, well, we're going to follow that decarbonisation approach that our organisation understands and look at the 3 scopes of decarbonisation. So direct impact, indirect and influence. So if we make something ourselves, we want to make it accessible. If we buy it in, that's indirect. We need to buy accessible. We've been working with our procurement partners. And then influence, well, we're here, I'm talking to you, we're engaged with professional bodies, we're engaged with the third sector, etc. So we're trying to spread the influence and seed the market with accessibility knowledge. Within my own organization, I sit across the piece, so I do both internal and external. So we have policy, governance and compliance and corporate strategy driven from the center, and then we have expert functions within the organization. We then apply that in our program. So we talk about delivering the 3 scopes, and then we apply that across both our business, external facing to our clients, across our portfolio, etc., and then also internally. So we have quality and audit functions, we have HR, so we're looking at recruitment and retention and training and all the rest of it, and then ecosystem, going out and talking and so on. So we address all of these, and we work with different areas of the business to agree with them what the OKRs will be for their area of the business. It's a complex topic, it's multifaceted, but it is also something that as an organization that we're providing digital services, we hope that we can help people go from that sort of bespoke to broken model where organizations don't have access to assistive tech to one where it can be fully managed and available for everyone easily. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. I would now like to bring in Majid for our 3rd presentation on immersive technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I kind of share with you a lot of kind of video clips to show you how we use immersive technology to help engaging our target audience. I'm going to share with you a recent project which we doing in kind of multiple phases. So the project was sponsored by the Welsh government, and we kind of put together a big group of experts to write curriculum about culture awareness, about racism. So that came from kind of, you see the different organization here. We have employers, we have learning providers, technology providers, and so on, and to put what I'm going to show you together, which is going to all be accessible through a website, which is a free resource available to everybody. So this is kind of the people worked, some of the people worked with us to develop the solution I'm about to share with you. So what we created the world's largest cultural awareness metaverse. And I'm sure you hear a lot about the word the metaverse and what the metaverse. So to me, and kind of a person been working in this industry for a long time, it is how you can create an environment to make it available, accessible by everybody without using any like headset or anything like that, providing the browser base, providing you have internet, you can access the solution. So within the environment, which I'm about to show you, there are kind of 70 hours of e-learning content at least, with all the free 60 videos, which I would like to say unscripted videos, came from people tell us their own experience, their own words, nothing is scripted. We just capture the videos and we share that within our metaverse. There's lots of augmented reality. Again, that is more about engaging our end users, and I'll share some of the AR with you shortly. What we did, we created initially 5 halls. So you have, for example, the atrium, and you can go out through, you walk in the street, you've got houses, 6, now we built 7 houses. Each house you go there, people tell you about their own experience in terms of cultural awareness. So you can see the different background using that kind of information. There is what we call immersive studies to show you about things come from different background, how have an influence in that. The word timeline is another one. And then this one is called the curriculum, that is based on the Welsh Assembly building, exactly digital twin of that. And then the one I'm going to share with you today, which has not been launched yet, but we kind of launched it officially on the 4th of December. So I'm going to share a video clip with you. Hopefully we'll see this And I will talk about there is something in the background, this kind of sound, but I'm going to mute the sound for now. So then I can tell you about what you see in there. So as I said, it's an online solution. You will look visual, something like this. Use the mouse and keyboard. You can walk around, and then what you see around everywhere. You have a freedom to go anywhere, click anywhere you like. He's got kind of, you can see there kind of English, Welsh language, because we have the number of Welsh speakers with us. To introduce you what about you're going to see. I'm going to fast forward that video because I've got limited time to show you the solution there. So what we created different metaverses, and you can see people here have important people to tell you about their own experiences. And then you can see different gates. Each gate you click on will take you into another, yet another metaverse. So in total, there are kind of the 4 or 5 metaverses, and we are about to launch a new one. And this is kind of scalable. So what you can add more. Our aim is to create more of this metaverse to share with our end users. So that's, for example, to show you the living experience. This is really an influential one. We created a street in Wales. That's from kind of exactly what it looks like with the houses and street. And the idea is you can, as I said earlier, you can go to any of these houses, and then you will see video clip of people tell you their own experiences. This young lady here, she would say, I was like born in Cardiff, and here's what kind of my own experience being. In this case, a Muslim one lived, grown in Cardiff. She'll tell you about the good and the bad things she experienced. And they'll say, go around my house, explore anything you want, have a look, see how we celebrate things and how we eat and what we drink and so on. Go to the next house and the next house, and each house represents different type of family. So just make you culturally aware about all the environment. Then you go to wartime line. That's another big environment. We're representing 4 different continents. And again, you can just move anywhere you like in any of the continent, and it will give you the best of each continent in terms of what being created and how we all benefited from that creation now. So what you see lots of kind of facts and figures. You find video clips, interactive learning resources within that. When you click, and then you will have information for you. E-learning modules, as I said, we use lots of these all icons you can see there. They're all clickable. There are kind of object, you can get closer, you can have a look. So Tej, for example, say what Taj Mahal, what's so important. You'll find QR code as well, where you can take your phone out and scan. There's no app required, accessible, really easy, and that will give you all the kind of information to engage the learner. So that's, for example, show you and take it from Asia to India. This, for example, ship, we have it in QR code, and I'll show that QR code after this video, which you see in there. Once you scan it, then you have that ship sit on your phone like that, and you can rotate it, just to give you a better engagement for the end user. This one, we did it like more like a museum type of information, and you find lots of people there, how they influence and what we have. The person tried to fly, the first person to create, for example, help us with generate electricity and so on. So it is a huge environment in terms of assets and what we have. And the beauty about what I'm going to show you here is this is not a commercial pitch. This is a free resource. Please go and have a look and then experience what we have. So this is the Senate, which is the Welsh Assembly, and that is more a library of, again, more learning material. You can click on any of the e-learning module there to have a free access to the solution in there. And that's a digital replica of that building. We did it because they part of this. So that's the kind of thing what we did. We launched it. We gave it, as I said, a free to schools, to colleges, to universities, whoever want that, they can go there and experience that. As I said, there are QR code all over the place. So I'll send you the style, share that with you. Just take your phone out and scan the QR code, and you'll have all these objects sit on your phone in 3D, but augmented with the background of your own role. And that is, again, about engaging our end user. What we're about to release on the 4th of December, we created what we call it the Bosnian Hall, and that is, we all possibly know what happened, the second genocide in the World War. So that is what we created here. We created a replica of one of the town, in Bosnia, and I don't know for the one who kind of remember that kind of incident, what happened in that time with near the United Nations building. So that's basically showing you that. And again, this is not a video. You go and do it yourself. You walk around and you have a look. If I just fast forward this little bit here. So this is what you see as end user. You'll be able to look around. This is showing, for example, the town was before the genocide. So everything looks peaceful, nice. You can walk around and you will see, for example, here, a coffee shop, but that is actually, it does exist to show you a mosque and a church next to each other, to show you how people lived happily next to each other and so on. But with one trigger, everything changed. So that just show you can walk around and you can experience things, and you will hear. There is basically there's a radio here. That was what the announcement being made about they're going to be attacked, and basically the disaster started from there. So just to show you that, I think it's lesson learned, understand from this. So we replay that journey, but rather than videos, you can actually do it yourself, which is it's quite a powerful way. So once you've done that, you will go into that show you then after the kind of what happened. That is the United Nations building over there. Used to be a battery factory, which has been more place for hostages. You can see the fire, the devastation everywhere, and then you will be able to click on all this chaos system in there. Each one you click on, you will have more information about what happened and some statistic and some data, what happened then. That show you, for example, part of destruction. You see shoes, for example, spread out everywhere, and that basically should represent how people actually left and escaped, they tried to kind of left their shoes behind and so on. That same factory, we created it then, it's become more now as a Moroccan museum. You can go and see people tell you the story about what happened to their beloved one. So that's kind of show you before and after the genocide. So if I just skip that little bit for you, because just again, limited time I have. If I just go to the next stage in that will take you into another kind of part to show you, for example, this is the real one. This is exactly what it looks like. Unfortunately, all the kind of cemetery with all the people buried, with everyone name in there, and then when they died. What you see in here, which you might find a strange thing to have, which is a watch. That watch, for example, what represents that watch is actually when they start taking people from the grave to see when that stopped. The watch stopped, so that tell you roughly when that person who had been executed and buried, or someone been buried alive. So again, it's quite powerful. When people use it, actually have seen it, actually they end up in tears and crying. But that's what we try to influence people just to see how kind of technology brings that story. But then the key thing to say, okay, forget about it. Let's focus about the future, and that will take you back to kind of a testimonial from a member of the mothers. Kind of said, okay, let's stand shoulder, let's kind of move forward, and then be happy together, and so on. So that's how immersive technology really could be beneficial to bring things to life, to get people together, to understand about things that you normally too scared to go and find out, or too nervous about finding information. And that's how a big believer on the AR and VR solution would help in that. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now. I think that's possibly my time. Is that?
Thank you, Majid. For the second part of this webinar, we're going to move on to a panel discussion, and then we'll also involve the audience Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please start putting them in the Q&A now, just purely because we might not pick them up in the chat box. So my first question, panelists, if you want to put your videos on. So the first question I've got is, as tech evolves, the digital divide, which we kind of heard about through Nicoll and Filippo, can create gaps in accessibility and inclusion. So how can companies using AI and tech in safety training address these disparities, particularly for underrepresented or digitally marginalized groups? Anybody want to jump in on that one before I start picking on you?
I'll start then, this is Neil. So I think that clearly that's sort of gone down a very sort of a path around the training. I think that the training can, for sure, we need to continually update training to be mindful of new technologies. There are certain things that you can do with AI in terms of using it to support various inclusive features. So you've got far better automated captions and automatic language translation and stuff like that within training now, which, if you think about it, we're a very diverse country. We've got lots of people where English is not their first language, so you can include people in that way. You can also use automated checkers to check the accessibility of new tools. Now, as new technologies evolve, they're constantly changing. You need to constantly also look at the assistive technologies and look at that interoperability with them. So it really needs to be built into the sort of life cycle processes of technology in organizations.
I think that's a really fair point. Filippo? Or Majid, sorry.
No, sorry, Filippo, I'll go. I'll come after.
I'll go then. No, I'm thinking about talking about Europe. There's like the AI Act that has been recently published. So in that case, but I mean, it's not only about the AI Act, it's about all legislation. So it's also important to have an ability to kind of influence and to work with policymakers to make everything accessible. So if we do not want to leave behind some disabilities, I'm thinking about, as I said during the presentation, intellectual disabilities. It is important, and we work together with policymakers to regulate, to monitor how those norms are implemented.
I think that's a very fair point.
Just to kind of add one more thing, I mean, we're doing a lot of projects and then what we kind of found in, for example, for SEN, special need learners, especially with neurodiversity, it's more about they can feel nervous, for example, experiencing a practical element and so on, because they don't like to be with people. They get nervous about this. So what we do, we prepare them by creating scenario-based learning, little segment of learning to make them at their own time, their own space to practice and repeat and repeat and repeat again until they're comfortable. And once they go to the real world kind of life experience, then they feel like more deja vu. I've done this before. I feel less nervous, and that has been really extremely successful in a lot of the projects we're working on.
I think that's a really interesting point, and often we do forget neurodivergent comes with different requirements and different support. It's not just the physical disabilities, learning disabilities, and SEN. We have, and neurodivergency is such a huge spectrum as well. So when we are implementing new technologies to improve digital inclusion, how can we measure success? And I suppose this is open; anybody can jump in. But how do we know that it's worked? How do we measure that success? I saw Neil's eyes light up, so I'm going to come to Neil first.
Okay, so well, there are standards. So a measure of success is, do you actually conform with the standards? And also, I think that as organizations, you can set OKRs, and different parts of organizations will have different objectives, but you can specify key results for inclusion. So say if it's marketing, for example, it might be that you don't put out posts without having image descriptions, and you can measure that, and or videos with captions to make sure, and you can track the metrics. And in a large organization like ours, there are lots of different people that might be putting those out. So we can track the trends, we can educate people and so on. So we can measure success in lots of different ways that are dependent on the context. But absolutely, the standards are really a core thing, because they also are part of the legal requirements that organizations need to meet.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much, Neil.
To me, it's more about learner engagement. It's more about, if you learn, we all learn in different ways, different methods. So if technology would help learners to reach, for example, if it's improving safety, if it's improving efficiency, whatever that is, providing technology can adapt for the learner needs, then that is how we can measure success, in my opinion.
Filippo, do you have anything
Yeah,
to add?
I'll get like a real example. I agree with both point of views. From the study we did, there was a Danish employer who had 2 or 3 employees who are deaf, and they have a cafeteria within the premises of the organization. So they hired a barista who was able to sign interpreter. So they were able to assist these employees exactly. So what the employers saw at the end of the year with the I don't know, feedback survey of the workforce, that a lot of colleagues so without disabilities were able to engage with those colleagues in the cafeteria. So in the terms of, rather than economic point of view, more of a social point of view, so a more cohesive workforce.
Yeah, I find it really strange that actually we all don't learn sign language as just as an automatic part of our learning when we're at school, because it's really useful, not just to be able to interact with people who are hard of hearing or who have no hearing, but also if you're in a busy pub or in a concert or something like that, it's something that, you know, can be really visible and really easy for all of us. I'm learning British Sign Language at the moment, but it's very slow. So no, thank you for those. So what so in addition to kind of physical safety, how can AI and immersive tech such as VR and the metaverse support workers with their mental well-being, particularly in those kind of high risk or really challenging environments?
If I may kind of answer that, and then I
Of
can
course
start
you
that.
can.
It's more about preparing and engaging the kind of end user. So it's more about, if you go in real life situation and to say to you, for example, if it's confined space or work at height, whatever, however you explain it, people are not going to experience it until they try it. So the VR, that would work really well. I mean, it's like if you walk in a building and it said, do not press this button, for example, thinking, I wonder if I press it, what will happen? What we do in our program is say, go and press it and try. And then that's what we create. If you don't take notes, we create injuries and fatalities and so on. So that is kind of, in a way, preparing and show the consequences of your lack of, for example, lack of actions. And then it could be a very stressful situation in real life. And that's VR would work really well to reduce that stress level and get them better understanding.
Neil, Filippo, would you like to add anything before we go on to audience questions?
I'll keep it really brief. I think that, you know, we live in a very highly pressured world. So in a totally different environment, like an office environment, actually there are scheduling tools and stuff like that that can actually look at the amount of time you're spending in meetings and looking at your thinking time, and that can suggest that you start putting in buffers. Those things can be useful for protecting your mental health. However, they're not perfect, because mine just says, unfortunately, we cannot find any time for you to have any clear time, but that's because I have someone that keeps filling my diary with things. But yeah, so there are things that potentially can be useful, and they can give you nudges to take better care of yourself.
I think that's really important. I think it's not just that physical health, is it? And that physical safety, but the mental health and mental safety can be really important as well. Filippo, sorry, I saw you took yourself on mute and then
it's
I
just
got
because
excited.
I don't want to add anything because Neil said it all. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and said it so very succinctly and very well. Okay, so we've had a couple of questions in the chat. So Patrick asks, different organizations use different technology for work. How do you want to address assistive technology to the benefits of all employees, including disabled staff? Anybody want to take that one?
This is in my wheelhouse. So we have a catalogue of assistive technologies that are available. There are also lots of assistive features built into operating systems, so we communicate about them. Obviously, being a multinational organization, there are differences in what's available in different countries and in different languages. So, you know, if you happen to live in the US, you benefit from the fact that Microsoft and Google are headquartered in the US, and everybody gets US English accessibility features first. but we communicate about them. We also have built technologies that enable us to understand the patterns of usage, crash and freeze data, and so on, that supports us to make sure that this stuff is not just provided, but continues to work seamlessly for people. And having a catalog means that it's not a free-for-all, because actually, when you're trying to work in a corporate environment and you're supporting thousands of different bits of corporate technology, that if you have 3 different screen readers, 3 different magnifiers, 3 different text-to-speech solutions, you're creating so much extra work in terms of testing and verification and everything else. So you have to a certain extent, constrain the choice in able to deliver the quality.
Anybody else got any thoughts? Or has Neil again succinctly and thoroughly answered it? No, don't apologise.
Yeah, I mean, I will work everything in the virtual environment, although I'm real here, but we do everything virtual and not in the physical side. So what we do our best in all our programs and the simulation we do is to kind of cover a wide range, although technology limit us in a number of ways, unfortunately, and we do our best to kind of overcome that to make program accessible to as wide as range as possible of our end users. So, but technology is always going to be sometimes as beneficial there. It could be kind of distracted as well.
Absolutely. So the next question that's come through, which Neil has kind of partly answered, but I thought we'd come back to it because I think it's really interesting, is how can multimodal biometric verification, for example, combining fingerprint and face recognition or iris scans, etc., cater to people with unique physical characteristics or disabilities?
You want me to?
Go for it, Neil.
More for you, Neil, this question.
Yeah, so I think I'm dyslexic and ADHD. I quite often mix up letters and numbers. So I was always locking myself out of systems and was on first name terms with the service desk. So I love, Face ID and fingerprint ID and so on, because they stop me making mistakes that I commonly make because of my disability that create barriers for me. Now, that's fantastic, but on the other side, we know that there are challenges with facial recognition systems not recognizing people with facial differences. And so then that becomes problematic because essentially you're excluding people through design. So there has to be multimodality of the biometric systems to enable people to have that equality of access. So that might then be, you can either use Face ID, fingerprint ID, or maybe you're using voice ID, because essentially accessibility is about allowing people to achieve the same outcomes through different methods.
Yeah, I mean, it's not kind of related to this question, but just about how technology again used. One of the things we are working on now is to use AI. I think personally think it's been used in a number of things, but not in the way or right way, or people call AI for different reason, for wrong reason. But to me, AI, how we can use it for adaptive learning. So, for example, as what Neil says, well, you have different way of doing. So, how we can adapt the learning based on the special need and then even the learning knowledge of that person. So how we can make things easier or more complicated based on the profile of the learner. So this R&D piece we're doing at the moment, we do a profiling for the learner to see where they are in, for example, if I do something in math or English or whatever the subject is. And then what we do, we simplify the scenario based on my own level. Someone else has got high level, someone like to. So we adapt that. So the outcome would have to be really everyone understand that topic. But AI would really play a big part with the immersive technology.
Right. And one last question, which I'm going to throw out to all of you. I'm going to ask you to do like 30 seconds each. What do you see coming in the future in the technology spaces? Any new innovations, and what do you think they look like for the workplace and future generations?
I'll go first and I'll be brief. AI is a big topic. I mean, that's been a big topic and it's going to be a big topic. What from our perspective at EDF and in general for all the organizations representing persons with disabilities is how it will be regulated and how it will impact different kind of disabilities. So that's the key for us, and I think AI will, if we're able to do like regulate properly, it will be beneficial for persons with disabilities in any aspect of their daily life.
Right.
I'm happy to go next. I'm just really, in terms of technology, I mean, 30 years has not really changed a lot in terms of immersive solution. What has changed, and hopefully the future is going to bring a part of AI, and what Filippo said here, it's about making hardware affordable, and we're seeing the cost going down all the time. So that's how we can make it accessible. And then talk about, for example, if you talk about VR, headset become better and better and better, but they still having that thing on your head for half an hour, even if you have no problem, you will get fed up with it. But how can you make it easy by wearing thin glasses that I put it in my head and I can see everything in VR and AR? I think that is what everyone working towards, and I cannot wait for that day to have that.
That sounds incredibly exciting. Great. Neil, any final thoughts?
So I am actually excited by the applications of AI right now in terms of building assistive solutions that work for people with cognitive accessibility needs, because, you know, meeting summaries, notes, inferred actions were things that are transformative for us. And then we're actually doing work on using AI to help people understand regulations better. So there needs to be regulation of AI, but we can also apply AI with proper human input from people with knowledge to help other people really understand some of these regulations. And as an organization, that's something that we're actively engaged in.
That sounds incredibly exciting and quite helpful for even those of us that think we know our relevant legislation pretty well. So thank you all very much. So I think for me, there's some really key bits that have kind of, as you guys have been talking, have kind of formulated in my brain. So that kind of ask, listen, implement is a super easy and clear way for us all to be able to support our colleagues with disabilities. And individual person-focused support is obviously really essential to ensure that we can all experience a safe and healthy world of work. Making sure that we're simplifying access to assisted technologies for everyone by working alongside IT, HR, and occupational health departments seems to be increasingly important for all of us to make our roles more effective and more efficient. I think it's really surprising as well that the difference between those, what companies think, what percentage companies think they have that people with disabilities versus people who are self-reporting, the slide that Neil showed. And I think that also shows that as employers, we need to make sure that we are creating psychologically safe workplaces to enable us to all be able to be open about our struggles and where we need our support. And as always, and we've spoken about mental health and the way we provide that support continues to be a challenge. I love that phrase, treating exclusion like pollution. And I think I'm going to take that away and use that with my board as well and see how, see whether we can change the conversation around assisting my colleagues with disabilities. And the metaverse was a really fascinating way of exploring cultural differences. And especially if you love kinetic learning and wandering around and all of that, that exploration is really exciting and is also a really immersive way of understanding some really impactful and potentially really traumatic events. And I can fully appreciate why people might have a very emotional response to it. So I just want to take the time to say thank you to all of the panelists for a really fascinating discussion this afternoon. So thank you for joining us all today, and take care of yourselves and each other.